The night stretched across the deserted highway, the dim glow of streetlights flickering against the damp asphalt. The scent of rain lingered in the cool air, blending with the distant hum of nature. Ethan Carter, a retired firefighter with graying hair, gripped the steering wheel lightly as his small truck rumbled along the quiet road. Beside him, Max, his loyal German shepherd, curled up on the passenger seat, his ears twitching occasionally at the distant sounds of the night. It was a peaceful evening, until everything changed in an instant. Blinding headlights barreled toward them at an alarming speed. Ethan barely had time to react. His instincts took over, honed by years of emergency responses. He yanked the steering wheel hard, tires screeching against the pavement. The truck skidded, veering out of control, slamming to the guardrail and plummeting into a deep roadside ditch. The impact was brutal. Glass shattered. Metal groaned. The world flipped violently. Then silence. Max let out a weak whimper, forcing himself to crawl out of the wreckage. His body trembled as he turned toward Ethan. His beloved owner slumped motionless in the driver's seat, blood seeping through his shirt. Panic surged through Max. He barked, nudging Ethan's hand with his nose. No response. His gaze darted around, desperation flickering in his amber eyes. Then something changed. Determination took hold. Max had to save Ethan. His legs were weak from the impact, but he had no time to rest. He licked Ethan's hand one last time, a silent promise, then turned and sprinted toward the empty road. Pain shot through his limbs, but he kept running. Light rain began to drizzle, the streetlights reflecting off puddles scattered across the asphalt. Cars sped past, their tires splashing to the wet road, oblivious of the desperate creature crying out for help. Max barked frantically, but no one stopped. He couldn't give up. Then a flicker of hope. Flashing lights up ahead. A police cruiser was parked on a roadside, its red and blue glow pulsing against the dark pavement. Officer Luke Reynolds stood beside it, scribbling something in his notebook. Max charged toward him, his paws slipping on the wet pavement. Luke frowned as the soaking wet, dirt-covered German shepherd barreled toward him. "Where'd you come from, buddy?" He knelt, but Max clamped onto his sleeve, tugging insistently. Max barked furiously, panic flashing in his amber eyes, and suddenly Luke understood. This wasn't a stray. This was a cry for help. Luke's gaze followed the direction Max had come from, where the road disappeared into the abyss of night. A strange unease settled in his gut. He decided to trust his instincts. "All right, kid, I'm coming with you." Luke threw open the car door, and Max leaped inside, drenched and shivering but filled with renewed determination. The police cruiser's engine roared to life, cutting through the darkness. Minutes later, Max jumped off the seat, scratching violently at the window, signaling that they had arrived. Luke slowed down, turning onto a dirt path off the highway. As the headlights swept over the deep roadside ditch, his stomach twisted. A small truck lay overturned, smoke curling from its engine, shattered glass glistening in the dim light. And there, a man slumped in the driver's seat, blood trailing down his forehead. Max let out a frantic bark, whining in sheer panic, scratching at the police car door so forcefully that it rattled in its frame. Luke barely had time to react before Max launched himself out the moment he opened the door. The dog bolted toward the wreckage, leaping onto the car door, pawing at the window, whimpering nonstop, his wet nose pressed desperately against Ethan's limp hand. Luke grabbed the crushed car door, yanking with all his strength, but the twisted metal wouldn't budge. Damn it! He gritted his teeth, throwing his weight against it. Max circled the vehicle, jumping up, scratching at the windshield, his amber eyes burning with desperate urgency. He turned back to Luke, barking sharply, whining as if pleading for him to act faster. Luke grabbed his radio. "This is Officer Reynolds. I need emergency rescue now. Car accident. One victim trapped. Critical condition." A faint groan slipped from Ethan's lips. Damn it, he's still alive. Max let out a heart-wrenching whine, leaping onto the door, licking Ethan's hand to the narrow gap, trying desperately to wake him. Minutes later, flashing red lights pierced the night. The rescue team had arrived. One firefighter rushed forward, eyes widening as he peered into the wreckage. "Oh, hell, that's Carter. You know him?" Luke asked, startled. Veteran firefighter. One of the best. The firefighter gritted his teeth, waving his team forward. Get the hydraulic cutters. We're not losing him. Under the flashing lights, Max never took his eyes off Ethan, pawing at his shirt, whining softly as they pulled him onto the stretcher. Max jumped up, placing his paws on Ethan's chest, growling when a paramedic tried to move him away. A nurse knelt beside him, gently stroking his head. You really love him, don't you? Max locked eyes with her, unwavering. He wasn't leaving Ethan behind. The ambulance sirens wailed into the night. Max didn't need an invitation. He leaped inside, curling up beside Ethan, standing guard like a loyal sentinel. Hours passed in the hospital, each moment stretching unbearably long. Max paced the hallway, his amber eyes locked onto the emergency room doors. Then Luke approached, his expression grim. We just have to wait, buddy. Max didn't want to wait anymore. A doctor approached Luke, handing him a clipboard. He has 3 broken ribs, severe internal injuries, and a skull fracture. We need to operate immediately. Luke nodded, but then the doctor's tone darkened. But his insurance won't cover the full cost. Without financial support or a guarantor, we can't proceed with surgery. Luke stiffened. Max lifted his head, ears perking up. The dog stared at the doctor, eyes glinting with intensity that almost seemed like understanding. Then he bolted. He rushed to the reception desk, leaping up, placing his front paws on the counter, letting out a desperate whimper, then a loud bark. His eyes pleaded. People turned to look. A young nurse reached out, stroking his back. He's begging us to help. Another staff member pulled out their phone, recording. Dr. Hart, the lead surgeon on Ethan's case, stood watching, her chest tightening. She couldn't let a man like Ethan be left behind. Minutes later, the video of Max was uploaded to social media, captioned, "This dog saved his owner from a horrific accident, but now his owner needs saving." Within an hour, hundreds of shares flooded the internet. Firefighters, police officers, Ethan's friends, and even strangers began donating. One comment stood out. Ethan has saved so many lives. Now it's our turn to save him. In just a few hours, the hospital received thousands of dollars in donations. Dr. Hart turned to her team. We're going into surgery. Max remained sitting by the emergency room doors, unaware that he had just created a miracle. The surgery lasted nearly 6 hours. When the doors finally swung open, Dr. Hart pulled down her mask, her face weary but filled with relief. He's going to be okay. Max barked loudly, the sound bursting with emotion. He raced to Ethan's bedside, jumping onto the mattress, staring intently at his owner's face. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. He turned his head weakly. You still here, buddy? Max pressed his head into Ethan's hand, tail wagging wildly. Luke leaned against the door, arms crossed. Hell, he got the whole city to donate for your surgery. Ethan chuckled weakly. Good boy. 3 days later, Ethan sat on his front porch, reading the headlines. Police corruption exposed. Lieutenant Eric Dawson arrested. Luke called him up. Told you I'd get them. Ethan smirked. You did good, Luke. So, Luke asked, you ready for that beer yet? Ethan glanced down at Max, patting his head. I think we have someone else here who deserves a reward too. Max wagged his tail, ready for whatever came next. He had saved Ethan's life. Now, as always, he would never leave his side.